Raila Odinga withdrawing from the forthcoming presidential poll rerun, and citing the inability of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to consider their demands before holding that particular election that is due because the Supreme Court of Kenya annulled the August 8th election that had declared President Uhuru Kenyatta the winner. And so this morning we shall see how this particular bill plays out, the kind of amendments that will be presented, and among those hoping to put forth an amendment is Honorable William Cheptumo, who brought forth this bill to the House. The quorum bell is ringing, and this is to call upon members to avail themselves to come in and participate in the making of legislation. And this morning, amendments to the Election Laws Amendment Bill 2017 awaits them. And they shall be doing that as guided by a report of the Select Committee on the consideration of the Election Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 39. And this particular committee compiled a report after hearing from members of the public and other stakeholders. A select committee chaired by the Honorable William Cheptumo, and who is himself scheduled to make a number of amendments. To this law. The members coming in, as you can see on your screen. And some of these amendments that will be proposed by the Honorable Cheptumo include one on just what should happen whenever there is a vacancy in the position of the Independent Electorals and Boundaries Commission chairperson and even vice chairperson post.
Civil Servants Housing Scheme Fund, B. Consolidated Fund Services, in brackets salaries, allowances, and miscellaneous service. C. Kenya National Examination Council. D. Wasonyiro South River Basin Development Authority. E. Muranga University. F. Water Services Regulatory Board. And G. State Department of Infrastructure. Vote 1091. Number 6, the Speaker, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements in respect of the following constituencies for the year that ended 30th June 2016 and the certificate therein. And it's important, members, to pick a copy of these audited reports of your constituency, national CDF, constituency, Lamu West constituency, 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 Kigumo constituency, constituency,
the papers. Order number 6, notices of motion. Let's start with the Honorable Leader of Majority Party.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motions. That this House adopts sessional paper number 1 of 2017 on the National Land Use Policy from the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning, laid on the table of the House today, Wednesday, October 11th, 2017.
Let's have a member for Tindred. I think you have something.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to give a notice of motion that aware that apathy in the sugar farming due to unfavorable weather patterns and poor payment programs by sugar millers to farmers has resulted in worrying drop in cane production and thus drop in sugar production, noting that millers have for years frustrated farmers through delays in payment for cane delivered, concerned that those late payments have caused sugar farmers untold suffering and frustrations and has made them incur huge losses resulting from interest from loans advanced to them during cane farming to purchase fertilizer and other farming inputs. Cognizant of the fact that as a result of these delayed payments, many of the farmers have remained poor and in debt, and this House urges the cane millers to provide for mandatory payment to cane farmers within 14 days upon delivery. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order number 7, statements. Order number 8, procedural motion, exemption of this the provisions of order 3.
Yes, leader of the party.
That this House orders the business appearing in order from the provision of Standing Order 40, subsection 3, a day sponsored by the majority or minority party or business sponsored by a committee. Straightforward, Mr. Speaker, you have heard the Honorable merely read the first motion. And on Wednesday morning, we usually deal with private members' motion and private members' private bills. And the House Business Committee found that we have received the first motion, which was given notice this morning. So from next Wednesday, if the calendar of the House allows, then we will procedurally start either dealing with a private member's motion or a private member bill. In the absence of those two, the House Business Committee felt that the House must continue, and it has slated business from either the majority or the minority party. And in that sense, if you look at the next order after this, is a business from the majority party, and then the next one will be a business from a committee. And that's why we have said, let's pass that procedural motion. So I'll ask Honorable Washiali to second.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Majority Leader in moving motion. And in second, Mr. Speaker, I want to start by saying that for us to have some business, money, we need to actually do this procedural motion so that we can proceed with the business.
I thought, is that the mood of the House? Yes. Even in absence of Dr. Pukose? Yes. Okay. So I will put the question, which is that the House orders that the business appearing in order paper be exempted from the provisions of Standing Order 4030, being Wednesday morning, a day allocated for business sponsored by the majority or minority party, or business sponsored by a committee. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? Ayes have it.
Order number 9, Committee of the Whole House.
So that display.
And in absence of
Thank you. Of the
it is therefore necessary for us, House, to propose amendment. So that Mr. Speaker,
behold the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too difficult for me? No.
Two aspects of this petition. That there was non-compliance with the law and the Constitution, and that actually substantially affected the election. Mr. Speaker, those two terms should be driven by the petition and therefore the basis of this.
So I propose a question which is at clause 9 be amended as proposed by Honorable Chibu. You will have two members speaking to this. That is Honorable Naoka Maore.
Mr. Chairman,
but even for me, my network is also poor. Why?
take in totality the purpose of an election.
Is
for the voice of the voter to be heard. During the day of voting, Mr. Chairman, problem that
inashinda ikifluctuate the network.
Whereby you have election officers who might go and decide not to stamp even some ballots or twist some things. It is upon us now to correct an issue that the outcome in totality does it substantially affect the result. If not, technicality should not be what we are looking for.
Of transmission of your voice.
I stand to support the amendment, having been a member of the committee and having deliberated so much. The election being declared void or by non-compliance is what has been deduced from the judgment of the Supreme Court, and therefore I support the good job done by the committee.
Okay, Honorable Haji. So I will put the question which is at clause 9 be amended as proposed by Honorable Cheptubo. As many as have opinion say aye. Many as have contrary opinion say nay. As have it. I put the question which is at clause 9 as amended be part of the bill. And as many as have opinion say aye. Many as have contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 10. Propose the question which is at clause 10 be part of the bill. Honorable Cheptubo. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman, I propose that the extent of the bill be amended to shown into this paper by in the proposed bill section 86A by deleting subsection 2. Mr. Speaker, the reason is fairly simple. That this proposed amendment, Mr. Speaker, in the bill tend to limit the
by the chair, because it really aligns the rights of the voters with the Constitution and the election laws. Thank you.
Okay, Honorable Joshua Kandie, member for Baringo Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I think I want to support the bill as proposed by the chair. Secondly, I want also, because this is my first time, I want also to thank the people of Baringo Central for giving me this chance to represent them in this August House.
Okay.
I support the motion.
Very well. Though ordinarily honorable members, if you really want to make your maiden speech, it's probably not very good to do it at the committee stage, because you see, you have very little time. And you would have had your 10 minutes to have an uninterrupted speech. So for members who have not made their maiden speech, please take that seriously. So let's have Honorable Mbarire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this proposed amendment. Mr. Speaker, I think it's important that we leave no doubt at all in the law as to who should participate in the fresh elections, if any. Mr. Speaker, we are right now waiting to hear what is the fate of Kuru Aukot, and we realize it's already been done. He's a candidate. He's now a candidate, Mr. Speaker, and that means that is very good news, Mr. Speaker. I hadn't heard of it, that now we are sure without a doubt that we are going to elections on the 26th of August. And it is important that, Mr. Speaker, we take this opportunity to tell Ekuru Aukot to go out there and look for votes as we do, because 26th of October is really the election date for this country. And we are glad that the courts have followed the law and realized that everybody has a right to participate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Very well. I am looking for a member to the right of the speaker, because I think they have been fairly marginalized. The left. Now, I'm trying to look at the members here and see if I can recognize any. No. Is that, that is interesting. Now then I'll give an honorable member for Nakuru Town East. I was just trying to pick on any, and you see.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Oh, Mr. Chair. Honestly, as it has been said, my dear sister, and this has brought clarity. I wish this law had passed last week, but now again, the guy already who has flown to England, or is he flying on Thursday? I think now he will need to reconsider and go and withdraw his letter that he took to IBC yesterday, because now he's not a candidate. And this law is going to give that clarity that in future, and I think the Supreme Court did read the mind of Parliament, and I hope in future they will continue reading the minds, and that just gives a justification that these amendments are in place and they are correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Lastly, leader of majority party, and I promise the members to my left that in the next amendment I'll give you quite some few slots to compensate.
Amendment I want to support, and this is the amendment that made Raila Odinga withdraw. And I want to make it very clear and go unanswered. Because he wanted to withdraw 2 days to the election. But this amendment has removed him from where he was hiding. And this amendment, Mr. Speaker, cures the Supreme Court judgment of 2013. And I want to make it very clear that in 2013, the court cited Article 138, subsection 1B, which that provision don't exist in the Constitution in the first place. Then in May of 2013, the Supreme Court, Mr. Speaker, if you allow me, for the country to know, made a correction. And the Supreme Court made a correction and said, we meant 138(8)B. And 138(b) talks about where either a candidate or his running mate dies. Mr. Speaker, to my knowledge, until yesterday, Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka are alive. To my knowledge, they have all died. And God forbid they don't die. They are good leaders, they are men, and we respect. So that withdrawal, Mr. Speaker, is not here, neither there. If you look at section 52, and I want my colleagues who are watching me from NASA to read section 53 of the regulations, in bracket general, section 53, section 52, section 21. And they will realize that what their party leader did, he threw everybody, including Kalonzo Musyoka, under the bus. They have nothing else. He has thrown them under the bus. They are all dead. Speaker, so this section...
Honorable Leader, which bus is this that anybody was thrown into? Because you see, you are speaking in tongues, and members want to be with you.
Mr. Speaker, the difference, it depends on which school you went to. I'm just trying to use English. It depends on who was your English teacher and who taught me English in school.
You know for sure.
I'm just using it in a phrase that when a candidate, like today, if President Uhuru Kenyatta withdraws without consulting us here, is an equivalent of him throwing us under the bus. That's what I mean. So he didn't consult. I
didn't want any confusion, because you see there is.
There are many buses. Let me pick Eldoret bus, Eldoret Express.
Because Honorable Gaduri is in another bus.
I used the Eldoret Express to reach Moi University during my young days. So Eldoret Express. But Mr. Speaker, so this amendment is not for 2016. I mean, to 26th of October. This amendment is for posterity. Maybe 20 years, 30 years from now, we might not be, our children will use it. If another candidate like Honorable Raila Odinga withdraws in 30 years, what will happen? So that is a function of the legislature. And the Speaker, there is no crime we are doing. We pay our children's school fees, and we pay our power bills by being members of parliament, by being the representative of the people, and our function is to legislate, to oversight, and to represent. And we sit here long hours to make laws. So this is a function which the people of Garissa Township, all of them cannot do. It can only be done by one Aden Duale. So Mr. Speaker, even Raila Odinga cannot do. His member from Mwingi North will do. Raila Odinga cannot do. His member for Langata, is it Kibra? For Kibra will do. And many, many other people, including even Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, will not do. His function is to assent. And Honorable Moses Kuria will do on behalf of him in legislation. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a very, very good amendment. And this is the amendment that made Raila Odinga call a press conference yesterday.
Very well. So I will put the question, which is at clause 10, be amended as proposed by Honorable Cheptumo. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it, and I put the question, which is at clause 10, as amended, be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Okay.
Clause 11.
I propose the question, which is at clause 11, be part of the bill. And I see there's a lot of protest by member for Langata. Was there any misrepresentation on the leadership, I mean, the MP for the, I thought so. So I think that must be the protest but that is clarified now. You are the member for parliament for the Prime Minister, for former Prime Minister. Proceed. Let's proceed. Let's not open that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I propose that the bill be amended as shown on today's order paper by deleting clause 11 and substituting therefore the following new clause. Mr. Chair, the rationale for this amendment is initially the bill intended to address the returning officers and the presiding officers. And we had been able, Mr. Speaker, in the bill to provide for punishment for those two staff of the commission. Mr. Speaker, upon going through the Section 6 of the Elections Act, it became very clear that the provisions under the Act was more elaborate and is able to provide the same offenses for either the presiding officer or the returning officer of the commission. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we've been able to only deal with the issue of the punishment and be able to enhance the figures from 3 million to 5 million in terms of penalty for those offenses. And so, Mr. Speaker, that is the justification why we are amending the bill to only provide for the penalty as opposed to targeting the returning officer or the presiding officers in the constituencies and in the polling centers. That is the basis of the amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Okay.
5 million.
Very well. So I propose a question, which is that clause 11 be amended as proposed by Honorable Cheptumo. And I had proposed to the members to my left that I'll give them a few opportunities here. And we will start with, I'm trying to see the members who are to the left of the chair. Honorable Kipsengeret, member for Soinsi Gowit. And I'll give a few more members from that side.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I stand to support this amendment, Mr. Speaker. As we know, returning officers and presiding officers, knowing that they have a responsibility, Mr. Speaker, they will not be in a position to play but to take serious the matter of election, Mr. Speaker. So I stand to support this motion, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing somebody else, maybe gender, Honorable Kihara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We all know the election officials are people who have gone to school. So anybody who doesn't do what they're supposed to do, we know they do it on purpose to mess an election. I've been a victim of an officer who messed my election. So I support the amendment so that anybody who plays around with the voter gets the consequences.
Honorable Halufo Order, member for Isiolo North.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I stand to support the amendment. This amendment is very important because it is aimed at addressing gaps in the existing law. We have had in situations where willfully election officials have committed, have failed actually to carry out what they are supposed to do. And therefore, with these penalties, I'm sure we are going to make sure that whoever is appointed as a presiding officer or a returning officer will be alive to what awaits him or her in the event that he or she willfully decides not to sign a particular form and therefore force some people to go to court and nullify elections.
Okay, Honorable Member, Honorable Pukose, Honorable Dr. Pukose. That will be the end on that one, and then we will give an opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. this, on the onset, I want to support this amendment, Mr. Speaker, because initially I think it was lenient, where they were talking of 3 years and 1 million. Now, when you raise it to 2 million or 5-year imprisonment, it makes it punitive and deterrent to the presiding officer or returning officer not to interfere with the process. So this amendment is good, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, so I put the question, which is at clause 11, be amended as proposed by Honorable Cheptumo. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it, and I put the question, which is at clause 11, as amended, be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
New clause 12.
Let's have the mover to move second reading of the new clause.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move for second reading new clause 12.
Yes.
That the bill be amended by...
Just to make it clear, is that be now read a second time.
Yeah, that the new clause 12 be read a second time.
Correct. So I propose a question, which is that the new clause new clause 12 be now read a second time. I think we will have debate on that one now. But let's start with you, Honorable Leader.
Booklet to tell the people what we've done. Otherwise, the people will not know what the government has done. So
okay.
I support.
Okay. So I will put the question, which is that new clause 12 be now read a second time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. And I propose a question, which is that the new clause 12 be part of the bill. Again, I'll give now 2 members only to speak on this one. And it'll be brief on so I'm trying to look at Honorable Iringo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I stand to support this amendment of the inclusion of the new clause 12. Mr. Chairman, in the current world, presently there's nothing which, you cannot get enough people to get to know the information you want to deliver if you are gagged and you are not allowed to advertise using the social media or the newspapers or either way or even broadcast. So, Mr. Speaker, I support that the government should not be gagged in order to sell its projects or its, the government's programs, because there are people who are outside there who are not in the capital city or anywhere, or all these things are done. So without that information, then the information will not reach the people as they would like to, the government would like to get to know.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That's fine, Honorable Iringo. Let's see Honorable Mutai, member for Buret. Brief, honorable members, very brief, so that we can save time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I rise to support the amendment by reason that we've been told recently that we need to have an equal playing ground. Then how can we have an equal playing ground if the government is not allowed to showcase what they've achieved? Secondly, in supporting the amendment, I just wish to state that people have to be given a chance to make informed decision on what the government has achieved. And they can only do this by providing them with the necessary information. On that ground, Mr. Chair, I support the amendment. Thank you.
Honorable Koi Waluke.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me also a chance to support this amendment that is done by the leader of majority. Mr. Speaker, it is always good that people, Kenyan people, be aligned by the Constitution, and it is always good also to the people of Kenya to get information on their fingertips, so that when they make a decision or when they are told that things are done by government, they also agree because they know. So, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Okay, honorable members. So I put the question, which is that new clause 12 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of a contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
Title.
I propose a question which is that the title be the title to the bill. I put the question which is that the title be the title to the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of a contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
Clause 1.
I propose a question which is that clause 1 be part of the bill. And I put the question which is that clause 1 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of a contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Now let's have the mover to move reporting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I beg to move that the committee do report in the House its consideration of the Election Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 39 of 2017, and its approval thereof with amendments.
Very well. So I'll put the question which is that the committee do report to the House its consideration of the Election Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 39 of 2017, and its approval thereof with amendments. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of our contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Honorable members, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, let's have the chairperson.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the Election Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 39 of 2017, and approved the same with amendments.
Very well. Let's have there and then the mover, Honorable Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. I do also request Honorable Kidhure, Mr. Speaker, to second the motion.
Who is Honorable Kidhure? You mean Honorable Kidhuri? Yes, it's called Honorable Kidhuri Mashinani.
With Alindi, and I think I confirm that I'm a man. I second this motion.
Okay, so honorable members, I propose a question which is that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. I see Honorable Cheptumo. Is that the mood of the House? Yes. So I'll proceed to put the question, which is that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Now, what is your point of order, Honorable Member for Nakuru Town East?
Thank you, Chair. You know,
what is out of
being
order?
on this side of the opposition becomes, your head starts spinning. Just to understand, for purposes of records of the House, the chair, the ad hoc chair, just moved on purpose of the amendment.
Okay, I will
just moving.
Let's save it there. Let's move fast to that reading. Then I'll give you an opportunity at that point.
Okay.
Unless it's something.
Thank you.
That is really that can't wait. I think it would wait. So let's. Let me ask the mover to move third reading of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Election Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 39 of 2017 be now read a third time. I also request Honorable Bukose to second.
Okay. Honorable Bukose.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I second this to the third reading. Thank you.
And I propose the question, which is the Election Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 39 of 2017, be now read a third time. A few members, maybe two. Let's have chair. But I had promised the honorable member for Nakuru Town East. What was it so that I can give the chair? Was it something?
Thank you, Chair. It's just some clarification from the Speaker. Chair, when the ad hoc chair was moving the amendments, he just mentioned the election laws as amended. And yet we have one that is amending the Election Offences Act, which was not mentioned. So does it mean then that has not been? Thank you, Chair. I needed some clarification from you. The chair of the ad hoc committee, which has just, the ad hoc which has just moved this amendment, spoke of the election laws amendment. And yet, in one of them we have the Election Offences Act, where we were amending the offenses. Those are two different acts. And are we amending one or are we amending both?
It's fairly straightforward, honorable member for Nakuru Town East. This is a conglomeration of many elections. There are several sets in here, offenses and so many. So really, he was completely in order. He's speaking on particular bills that touch on election. So he's okay. I think that is fairly clarified. So let's have the...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me start by thanking my colleagues for the very valuable contributions they made yesterday in the second reading of this bill, and Mr. Speaker, in also today supporting the amendments to the bill. Mr. Speaker, as I said yesterday, we have now as a House be able to show the country that the amendments proposed to the IBC Act, to the Elections Act, and indeed the Election Offences Act, Mr. Speaker, were not meant or passed by this House to benefit Jubilee as a party, but we do so, Mr. Speaker, for the good of this country, for the betterment of our country, Mr. Speaker, to realign our laws to comply with the Constitution, to fill the gaps, Mr. Speaker, which we've been able to, which the Supreme Court, Mr. Speaker, was raised during the recent judgment. Mr. Speaker, today it is now possible to transmit results electronically, Mr. Speaker, and through physical delivery of the results from the constituencies, from the polling station, Mr. Speaker, to the National Tallying Center. Mr. Speaker, we have never, as a House, undermined the transmission of results through the electronic system. Mr. Speaker, there has been that argument that what we have done is to diminish the transmission of results electronically. What we have done, Mr. Speaker, is to provide an additional system that is through the physical delivery. Mr. Speaker, this is good for our country, so that, Mr. Speaker, even when there's a problem with the electronic transmission, we have a way of receiving results through the physical delivery to the National Tallying Center. Okay. Mr. Speaker, we should be counted as a House which has been able to bring order and to bring, Mr. Speaker, cleanup of our laws. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the amendments to the Act 86A4, Mr. Speaker, which is able now to clarify situations where you have two candidates in the elections. And Mr. Speaker, one of them withdraws. There was no clarity, Mr. Speaker, in our laws. But today now we have a law that we can fall into and say, yes, one has withdrawn, the remaining candidate, Mr. Speaker, should therefore be declared the president. Mr. Speaker, this is also some of the areas we've been able to bring as a House. And Mr. Speaker, allow me once again to thank my colleagues, members of this House, that we've been able to do our business as given to us by our Constitution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank members, and I thank you also.
Okay, honorable members, having confirmed that we have the required quorum, I proceed to put the question, which is that the Election Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 39 of 2017, be now read a third time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to amend election-related laws and for connected purposes.
Next order.
Order number 10, motion. Approval of the report on the supplementary estimate for the financial year 2017-2018.
Okay, let's have Honorable Limo, is it? Honorable Limo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker,
just move the motion, Honorable Limo.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby move the motion that this House adopts the report of the Ad hoc Committee on the supplementary estimates for the financial year 2017-2018, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, October 10, 2017, and pursuant to the provisions of the Article 223 of the Constitution and the Standing Order 243, approves, 1, an increment of the total recurrent expenditure for the financial year 2017-2018 by Kenya shilling 63,513,309,301 in respect of the votes as contained in the schedule. 2, a reduction of the total expenditure for the financial year 2017-2018 by Kenya shilling 24,899,676,347 in respect of the votes as contained in the schedule. 3, an overall increment in the total budget for the financial year 2017-2018 by Kenya shilling 38,613,632,954 in respect of the votes as contained in the schedule. And that, 4, further resolves that the schedule forms the basis of the enactment of the first Supplementary Appropriation Act 2017. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, sorry. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, on behalf of the members of the Ad hoc Committee, on supplementary estimates and pursuant to the Article 223 of the Constitution and Section 44 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012, Section 40 of the Public Finance Management Regulations 2015, and Standing Orders 243, it is my pleasure to present to this House the committee's report on the supplementary estimates number 1 for the financial year 2017-2018. Mr. Speaker, the HADO Committee on the Supplementary Estimate was formed on the 28th September 2017 in line with the Standing Orders number 218. The committee assumed the functions of the Budget and Appropriation Committee as contemplated in the Standing Order 207 relating to the review of the budget estimates. In particular, the supplementary estimates for the financial year 2017-2018 and any legislation related to those estimates. Madam Speaker, the HADO Committee is comprised of the following honorable members: the Honorable Joseph K. Limo, MP, Chairperson; the Honorable Dr. Naomi Shaban, MP; the Honorable Moses Lesonet, MP; the Honorable Alois Leitomanga, MP; the Honorable Bernard Masaka Shinali, MP; the Honorable Katib Mashetani, MP; the Honorable Sarah Paulata Korere, MP; the Honorable Fatuma Gedi Ali, MP; the Honorable Walisha Wario, MP; and the Honorable Ruth Mwaniki, MP. Madam Speaker, the supplementary estimate 1 for the financial year 2017-2018 was submitted to the National Assembly on the 27th September 2017. The HADO Committee on the Supplementary Estimate examined and discussed the estimates and has made recommendations which are contained in this report. If approved by the House, these recommendations will form the basis for the passage of the Supplementary Appropriation Law. Madam Speaker, in reviewing the first supplementary estimates for the 2017-2018, the committee held 7 sittings, which included 2 sittings with the National Treasury. The committee also consulted with the various ministries, government agencies, independent officers, and commissions, and their submissions have been taken into account in finalization of this report. Madam Speaker, in line with Article 221(5) of the Constitution that requires public participation in discussing and reviewing the budget estimates, the committee received written submissions from the public, and these have been taken into account in finalization of this report. Madam Speaker, the committee is grateful to the various ministries, departments, and agencies of the national government, as well as the independent officers and commissions who appeared before the committee on short notice, and that they sat through the lengthy deliberations in the process of reviewing this supplementary estimate. The committee also extends gratitude to the public who submitted written memorandum on the supplementary budget for the commitment and patriotism in ensuring that Parliament lives up to its oversight role. Lastly, Madam Speaker, the committee also is grateful to the Office of the Speaker, National Assembly, the Office of the Clerk of the National Assembly, the Parliamentary Budget Office, for the steadfast support received as it is discharged its mandate of reviewing the first supplementary estimate for the financial year 2017-2018. Madam Speaker, it is therefore my humble duty and privilege on behalf of the HADO Committee on the Supplementary Estimates to table the report of the first supplementary estimates financial year 2017-2018 and recommend it to the House for adoption. Here below, Madam Speaker, signed by all the members who are members of this committee, Madam Speaker, and namely, Honorable Joseph Limo, Honorable Ruth Moniki, Honorable Bernard Masaka Shinali, Honorable Fatuma Gedi, Honorable Naomi Shaban, Honorable Alois Letomanga, Honorable Moses Leisonet, Honorable Kimani Ichungwa, Honorable Katib Mwashetani, Honorable Walicha Wario, and Honorable Sarah Pauleta Korere. Madam Speaker, this House approved the budget for the financial year 2017-2018 in March, which was 3 months before the constitutional deadline of June 2017. This was to pave way for the country to prepare for the general election, which was held in August 2017. But the Supreme Court ruling occasioned a repeat election to be held within 60 days of the ruling. Consequently, 3 months into the implementation of the budget, expenditure on repeat of the presidential election in addition to the protracted drought needed more funding, Madam Speaker. There's also need to enhance the funding for the free-day secondary education, which the government promised to be implemented from January. Madam Speaker, there was also need to get more funding for implementation of agreed CBAs to quell labor unrest in education sector, which all this, Madam Speaker, necessitated the first supplementary budget. The supplementary estimates were submitted to the National Assembly on the 27th September 2017, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as the 11th National Assembly noted during the approval of the budget in March this year, implementation of the budget in an election year is bound to face significant challenges. Currently, there is heightened uncertainty in the country on account of protracted political activity as the country prepares for a repeat presidential election. This has adversely affected business environment, leading to serious shortfalls in revenue collection. This has adversely affected business environment, and it has actually even increased other prevailing challenges, which include food insecurity, above target inflation, labor unrest, particularly in the health sector. As a result, the economy outlook for this year is not favorable, and the growth projections have been revised downwards about 5% or below by various institutions, including the National Treasury, the IMF, World Bank, and the Parliamentary Budget Office. This revision of the growth and targets implies that revenue shortfalls, which means the expenditure allocations or borrowing, could be adjusted downwards during the financial year to mitigate the impact of all this, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the supplementary budget proposes a number of changes in various votes for both recurrent and development expenditure. Overall, the first supplementary budget proposes to increase the total budget estimates by shillings 38 billion, Madam Speaker. This comprises of the net increase in the recurrent expenditure of 63 billion and a net decrease of 24 billion in development expenditure. Madam Speaker, this House
Madam Speaker, this House is aware that the process of supplementary budget preparation, approval and implementation is provided for in Article 223. Also note that some crucial content such as actual budget performance, updated expenditure dates and revenue projections, outstanding liabilities and commitment, as well as the impact of the budget changes on contingent liabilities and pending bills has not been provided. This is as concerned as without this information, this House may not be in a position to make informed decisions. Madam Speaker, you will recall that this House raised same concerns in the first and second supplementary budgets for the financial year 2016-2017. But it appears that this matter has not been taken into account. It is necessary, therefore, for this information to be included, as it will promote risk management, consistent and predictable budget planning and implementation. Madam Speaker, the committee also observed that despite the provision of PFM Regulation 40, subsection 8, that no new programs or projects should be included in supplementary budget, new projects have been introduced under the Ministry of Health, e.g. construction of health facilities, and the State Department for Sports, renovation of various stadiums. Madam Speaker, it is important to adhere to laid down regulations on the budget as to avoid distorting the policy direction of the budget has been envisaged. As such, any projects with no budgetary provisions which do not meet the criteria of a supplementary budget should ideally be deferred to the following financial year. Madam Speaker, under the current recurrent budget, it is also noted that significant cuts have been effected on various items such as domestic travel, foreign travel and training expenses. Indeed, honorable members, there is a reduction of 20% on domestic travel and 75% on foreign travel, training expenses, printing and advertising, among other expenses for operation and maintenance across the board for all ministries, departments, and agencies, including Parliament and Judiciary. In particular, Madam Speaker, significant reductions are noted in the recurrent budget under both Parliamentary Service Commission and the National Assembly votes, which has been reduced by 6.8 billion. Bulk of these cuts relates to committee work for both National Assembly as well as Senate. Other significant cuts are in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which are a reduction of 32 billion meant for operation and maintenance expenses in Kenya, consulates, embassies, and high commissions all over the world. Madam Speaker, as I continue, Madam Speaker, for the benefit of the members who are new in this House, what I'm reading now are recommendations which were given by the National Treasury in the draft supplementary estimates. And therefore, when I'm reading, I have not reached our recommendations. So these are the ones I'm reading are recommendations by the National Treasury, and therefore should not be construed to be recommendations by this committee. Before the end of this report, you will hear our recommendations, and therefore, I urge this House to just hold a bit. Madam Speaker, however, the committee observes that despite these austerity measures, the total recurrent budget has, however, gone up by 63 billion. The major increments will mainly cater for the following activities: very important activities, Madam Speaker. Number one, 23 billion will be for enhancement of free day secondary education. This is in line with the current proposal for the national government to have universal education in our secondary schools beginning in January. So it is coming to reality that allocation of 23 billion has been given for this activity, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there is also a recommendation of 10 billion for Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to cater for the repeat election. Madam Speaker, the impact of repeat election is coming to reality, that the economy has to inject at least 10 billion shilling to cater for this activity, which is going to happen with no doubt on the 26th October 2017. Madam Speaker, for record purposes, I wish to state very clearly that so far the election is still scheduled. We have not received any indication from IEBC not to allocate this money. And therefore, this money is being allocated. And squarely, I propose to this House that you adopt this one. Madam Speaker, there is also recommendation of 6.1 billion for older persons cash transfer program. You remember that the government has expanded the cash transfer program to cover all the older persons in the society who are above 70. Security operations, including resettlement of IDPs, who are expected to be the last lot of IDPs, Madam Speaker. These were occasioned, you remember, by the post-election violence, which we are not really, we are not amused by this, Madam Speaker. We want to close this chapter, and we don't want anything like this to happen again in this country. Madam Speaker, we have 5.2 billion to cater for salaries for university staff in line with the implementation of the CBA, which has been signed with the various universities, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there is a maize subsidy of 3 billion, famine relief supplies of 2.2 billion, life offtake program 950 million, among other drought mitigation measures. Drought has affected at least 14 counties in this country, and this is going to reduce the impact on the members of the public in those areas, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is important to note that despite austerity measures in the budget, the overall budget increased by 38 billion, while the recurrent expenditure has increased by 63 billion, as earlier stated. Thus, the supplementary budget does not fully address the expected financial shortfalls. Extraordinary times, Madam Speaker, call for extraordinary measures. Under the prevailing circumstances, expenditure cuts are necessary, if not unavoidable, particularly in regard to non-priority expenditure. However, Madam Speaker, this cut should be instituted through a well-thought-out framework, taking into account the nature of work of the various spending agencies to ensure that service delivery and operations of these agencies are not adversely affected. Application of a blanket formula across all agencies is not ideal, as it could it will disappropriate. Hey, Madam Speaker, you know English came from abroad, Madam Speaker. Yeah, if a blanket formula is applied, Madam Speaker, it will actually affect the minimum budgetary needs depending on the nature of their work and could hinder day-to-day operations of the various spending agencies, Madam Speaker. It is also noted that such extensive cuts across the board renders the budget unpredictable and it is not supportive of the medium-term expenditure framework. What it means here, Madam Speaker, is that Treasury was supposed to use a formula which is tailored, but it is the work of this committee. It was the work of this committee, Madam Speaker, to develop a framework, and that framework is the reason why we had to sit with all the ministries and really go line by line to ensure that service delivery is not affected, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the major reductions which were proposed by Treasury, which affects development budget, are mainly affecting the following areas, and I wish to state. These are the proposals by National Treasury. And shortly, we'll give you recommendations on how this committee thought should be, in one way or the other, changed. Madam Speaker, there is a 6.7 billion meant for the digital literacy program, laptop program, which were reduced. That means it will slow down the program shortly. Madam Speaker, there is 7.5 billion for the LAPSET project, Madam Speaker. There is 9.5 billion from the Department for Planning and Statistics. There is 7.2 billion meant for various infrastructure projects in public universities. There is 5 billion meant for completion of various roads under the State Department of Infrastructure. There is 5.2 billion from the Department for Investment and Industry, including money meant for development of leather industrial park and special economic zones. Finally, Madam Speaker, 2.4 billion for Parliamentary Service Commission. Madam Speaker, it is important to note that there are some agencies with additional allocations to their development budgets, some of which are enhanced donor commitments. These include the following: 8.3 billion counterpart funding from China for equipping of various technical institutes with modern equipment. Madam Speaker, this is money meant for equipping the technical institutes which have been developed all over the country. In many, many constituencies, you will find new technical institutes. So this one will help them get the equipment. Madam Speaker, there is 3.7 billion in form of donor funds to cater for implementation of National Agricultural and Rural Inclusive Growth Project. This is a project which was designed to help develop agricultural activities across the country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there is also 7.4 billion net increase on account of increased donor commitments as well as enhanced allocation for electric Turkana power. This, Madam Speaker, is meant to enhance power generation activities in the country. Madam Speaker, there is also 2.5 billion to the Kenya Climate Smart Agricultural Project, Madam Speaker. And finally, 2.2 billion to cater for low-cost housing. There is a project raised concern over inadequate inclusion of all donor commitments in the budget. It appears that the framework for donor commitments is not comprehensive enough, and as a result, there is always in-year revisions of development estimates, Madam Speaker, related to the external resources. This is one of the key contributions to low absorption of external resources in the recent years. This, Madam Speaker, the import of this, Madam Speaker, is that failure to disclose the various donor commitments early means that the government will delay in providing the necessary funding because donor-funded projects in most cases is accompanied by counter-funding. The government funds and the donor funds. One of the, a certain percentage, and a certain percentage is funded by the donors. The delay in showing disclosure of this means that the allocations will come late, and therefore the absorption will not be very desirable at the end of the day, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this committee observes that the changes in the development budget, and with respect to ongoing projects, some of which have contractual obligations, that if it is breached, Madam Speaker, could lead to payment of penalties as well as slowing down the completion of the project, and at some point, even some projects stalls, Madam Speaker. Furthermore, disruption of expenditure allocations midway means that there may be deferred payments leading to pending bills at the end of the financial year. Pending bills being non-priority, priority payments in the government spending further reduces available development-oriented resources, while necessitating special audits within the year to ascertain their nature, Madam Speaker. What it means, Madam Speaker, when there is a delayed, when there is disruption of development expenditure, Madam Speaker, there will be a lot of pending bills which will form priority payments in the next financial year, and therefore narrowing the available resources for further development, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the benefit of development spending over recurrent is that it's more likely to generate higher returns in the long run by increasing production capacity of the economy and more sustainable growth as opposed to recurrent expenditure. Madam Speaker, revising the development budget downwards in the course of the year could lead to lower contribution of the development budget towards sustainable economic development. This also points to the possibility that at the end of the year, the development budget could constitute less than 30% of the implemented budget as provided for in the PFM law. Madam Speaker, the committee is also concerned that supplementary budget has distorted the policy direction of the budget, particularly in regard to alignment of the budget to the policy priorities as spelled out in the budget policy statement. The proposed changes in supplementary budget have let down the revision of targets for key policy interventions such as ongoing public investments in roads, agricultural mechanization, industrial investment, including special economic zones, and industrial parks. Vulnerable persons, assessing subsidized health insurance, and construction of teacher training colleges one. And therefore, Madam Speaker, we recommend that the county assemblies, in their own motions, take into account the austerity measures we have also taken here. Madam Speaker, the committee recommends the following increments, some of which are reversal of the initial reductions, which in the opinion of the committee could have adversely affected the ministries and the MDAs adversely, and therefore, to mitigate that, we recommend the following. One, to increase 4 billion, sorry, Madam Speaker, to increase 2 billion recurrent expenditure for management of electoral processes in Vote 2031 Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. This is in response to the need for more funding, which was occasioned by the need to upgrade the systems, including the camps, Madam Speaker. And therefore, we are recommending that increase. Madam Speaker, we also recommend an increase of 3.7 billion to recurrent expenditure for food subsidy under the Crop Development and Management Program in Vote 1161, State Department of Agriculture, to pay the deficit and meet the gap on food requirements. Madam Speaker, we also recommend, number 3, increase of 350 million development expenditure to upgrade the ASK Jamhuri Park, a Jamhuri Showground, Madam Speaker, under the General Administration and Support Services Program in Vote 1161, State Department of Agriculture. Number 4, we recommend an increase of 131 million for recurrent expenditure for the Witness Protection Program in Vote 1321, Witness Protection Agency. Madam Speaker, we are also recommending an increase of 3.8 billion to recurrent expenditure to cater for operations and maintenance expenditure in the Parliament budget. Madam Speaker, we also recommend, number 6, increase of 1.9 for cooperatives. This additional allocation is for the debt waivers for the following. 1, we also recommend an increase of 125 million to the Kenya requirement, but we recommend that this should be reviewed again in the next allocation, because this is very important, as it actually creates jobs for the youths. But as Speaker, we also recommend an increase of 400 million to the Export Processing Zone Authority under the State Department for Industry and Cooperatives for various capital projects.
Honorable Limo, just to alert you, you have 3 minutes to go.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well guided. Madam Speaker, we also recommend an increase of 15.7 million to the Salaries and Remuneration Commission for payment of contractual activities related to job evaluations. And a further increase of 45 million for the expenditure to the State Law Office for construction of the ongoing ultra-modern library in Karen. Madam Speaker, we also recommend an increase of 183.99 million to the State Department for Education for payment of pending bills for the purchase of sanitary towels. Madam Speaker, as I end, Madam Speaker, the committee further recommends the following: that this House, therefore, resolves to approve, 1, an increment of the total recurrent expenditure for the financial year 2017-2018 by 63,513,309,301 in respect of the vote as contained in the schedule. 2, a reduction of the total...
David Olesankok.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And may I take this opportunity to congratulate you for having been appointed to the Speaker's panel. I know you are up to the task. I know your background. I know your legal background. So I'm quite sure with the rest of the panelists, you will really perform very well. Honorable Speaker, I also want to congratulate the chair of the committee, Honorable Limo,
and the rest of the committee for doing a wonderful job. Despite the uncertainty that the country is facing, they sat down, collected stakeholders' views, and they are here, and I'm sure honorable members of this House are very happy for the job that they did. Honorable Speaker, I know they were under the guidance of our majority leader, His Excellency Ndwale, and Ndwale. I know some of the people may say why, but then this one will come and pass in 2022. Honorable Speaker, the supplementary budget have really touched most areas in, that we really need to pump in some money, especially when we talk about the collective bargaining agreements that are pending, and you have seen the amount of strikes that we have been facing from our professionals, and I'm sure this supplementary budget will solve those issues of those strikes. And I've learned some lessons. One of the lessons is that some people, and we are not being malicious, but some people have been asked to oppose electoral laws. And they did not ask why, and they did not ask, and what else are we opposing? Because now we are discussing the supplementary budget, and our colleagues are not here, simply because they were asked that it is electoral laws. They did not even have the energy, though they have the energy to come and pick food from our cafeteria, they don't have the energy to pick the order paper and see that there are other businesses that will be in this house. So I request that wherever they are listening to us, because I know they are just around and they are watching this TV, let them know that there are other businesses that we contact in this house, not necessarily what they have been asked to oppose. I've also learned a lesson from the biblical enemies, that your enemies will come through one direction, but they will scatter in several directions. Now there are scatters, there are others who have come to Jubilee, there are others who have gone to UK, there are others who have, I heard that Wetangula is towards Japan so that he can go and finish the business of the Japanese embassy, our embassy in Japan. I've also heard that there are someone else who have remained to make sure that the M-Pesa pay bill number 99144 is followed to the letter. Madam Speaker, we have a problem as a country, and that is why we are passing the supplementary budget. Yet, our legal agencies are not taking legal measures against people who have a pyramid scheme of conning Kenyans through M-Pesa pay bill number. Now Kenyans have contributed a lot of money, millions if not billions, and somebody just literally withdraw from the race, did not use that money. We also need our Prosecutor General to follow up on this matter and see if it is a pyramid scheme that Kenyans were conned of millions of shillings using that pay bill M-Pesa number. And Safaricom should open the server of that pay bill number so that we know if they are conned, then people will be given back their money, because no one is above the law. No one is allowed to con. If we can take to jail a chicken thief, what about a thief of millions, billions of shillings? Some of the contributors are poor Kenyan citizens. Some of them are mercenaries. Some of them are chicken sellers. Yet they have contributed, they have forgone their lunch, they have forgone their dinner so that they contribute. We also need, as we pass the supplementary budget, because we are still passing the supplementary budget that affect the taxpayers' money, even though that money that was contributed was taxpayers' money. Madam Speaker, with those very many remarks, I beg to support the supplementary budget.
The Honorable Member for Turkana Central, are you on an intervention or you want to contribute to the debate?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I would like to thank the other committee led by Honorable Limo for what they have done. Madam Speaker, as much as we talk too much here, about the individuals, we should know that this Kenya belongs to all of us. Before I come to that point, Madam Speaker, let me comment on the supplementary budget. Number one, Madam Speaker, you cannot allocate money for the process and you don't allocate money for the manpower. The nurses are on strike. Now we allocate money for medical whatever, for training and all that. And yet the people who are supposed to implement, they are outside medical facilities. That's nonsense, Madam Speaker. That one does not count anything at all. So we must first treat the problem.
The Honorable Nakara, you are out of order. I don't think we have any nonsense that is done within this House.
Madam Speaker, I'm talking nonsense in a way that...
And Honorable Nakara, again, I want to ask members to confine themselves to within the confines of the debate, according to the standing orders.
Madam Speaker, I was not referring to any honorable members. I apologize and withdraw the statement. But I was trying to say that, Madam Speaker, it makes no sense for us to budget for the process, for the drugs, and yet we have left the nurses outside the budget. So for that particular matter, Madam Speaker, our work here will be infertility because we are not treated the problem that's facing health sector in this nation. We must first reinstate our nurses and continue now budgeting for the process. Second, Madam Speaker, the money that we have allocated for IBC, for what purpose now? We don't have election. We want that budget to be returned back to the central bank so that we can wait.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with a lot of respect to my brother and colleague, who is actually doing his second term, I expected him to be able to inform this House in the sense that the recurrent expenditure for nurses, which today has made them go to the streets, is a budget that is catered for under county governments. And therefore, the salaries of the nurses, if any, should be catered for under the county government budget, which I think this government has already made, and in due course, the county governments will be receiving money, which will then make them negotiate with the nurses so that they are back in on duty. Therefore, you cannot blame the national government. And what we are dealing with is a budget for the national government and not county government. Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I think you've passed the information. Honorable Nakara.
That he does not know that livestock portfolio is devolved function. It's in the county. And in fact, what we are giving as supplementary in the supplementary estimate is only additional. County government of Turkana gets up more than 11 billion shillings. 13 billion, that's I'm being corrected. Can he confine himself to what the county government should have done instead of misleading the House?
Honorable Nakara.
Madam Speaker, let me inform my fellow member that this is a national project. It's not a county government project. This is a national launched by His Excellency, the President himself. So you should not say that because Turkana is getting 11 million, they should take that role, which is supposed to be done by the national government. I'm talking about the national budget. I'm not talking about the county budget. Madam Speaker, on the issue of education, okay, they have allocated that money, Madam Speaker. But you see, Madam Speaker, every aspirant for the presidential position was actually promising to give free education when it's elected. Now, as we have allocated this money, we cannot say that this money has been given by the Jubilee government. No. Even if Raila could have passed, this money could have been still allocated to the budget. Madam Speaker, another issue. From all the projects that you have seen, most of those projects, Madam Speaker, have favored some particular areas. It has favored some particular areas. You are adding more development to the areas that are already developed. You are building stadiums in the areas already they have. Why can't we, Madam Speaker, challenge ourselves and say, let's do equality? They should not bring the name of right.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know, Madam Speaker, is a very opportune moment for many of us to make political statements on a very serious matter, but it's also very irresponsible of us in this House. This House is a House that has been charged with the responsibility of appropriating resources. As a House, and the member from Turkana, Madam Speaker, has said very, very uncallous things of the government. And he may assume that he's speaking about government, but you are talking about this House, because it is this House that is appropriating resources. Madam Speaker, is a member in order to be saying that this House is appropriating money in a skewed way, and even has gone ahead to mention stadia, forgetting that stadias like in Wote, in Makueni County, Wote is in Makueni. There was no stadium. And he's saying that we are allocating money to areas where there was stadia before. The stadia, Madam Speaker, if he's not read the report or even looked at the appropriations as done in the supplementary, those that are being done in areas that were there is a stadium like Kasarani and Nyayo Stadium that are being refurbished, and Kipchoge Keino in Eldoret. Madam Speaker, the same member is talking about a national insurance scheme for livestock and saying that this House only appropriates money on paper. We do not appropriate money on paper, Madam Speaker. That money, if the member has been ignorant of what has been going on, only last month, the government, and I can't remember what insurance company, because this is money that goes to pay premiums for livestock insurance. I did witness, and it's a matter that was widely covered in the news, Mheshimiwa, livestock farmers being compensated. And therefore, as a responsible leader in Turkana, what he should be doing is to educate these people to get their livestock into the livestock insurance scheme, but not to accuse this House of appropriating money on paper, because we do not appropriate money on paper, Madam Speaker. We appropriate money, and this House also has a responsibility to oversight government on the implementation of that money, Madam Speaker. And therefore, I want you to find the member completely out of order to accuse this House of appropriating money on paper, of appropriating money to projects that do not exist, because they do exist, and it is committees of this House. And I'm sure you probably will sit in the Livestock and Agriculture Committee, and you may be able to oversight whether that money actually goes to paying premiums for livestock farmers in your own county. But since you probably get home once a year or twice in a year, you may never know when these things are happening.
The Honorable Member for Nandi County, Dr. Tum Chebet.
Yeah, Honorable Speaker, I want to say I'm so happy for the Supreme Court because they have allowed Dr. Ekuro to be on the ballot paper. This country cannot be held on ransom by NASA side of the coalition. Even the member of Turkana today is saying there will be no election. We are not going to approve the 10 million for the presidential election. I want to tell him there are many things which have happened. Our women are crying because the businesses are not going on well. There is a lot of political unrest, and we cannot leave Kenya to be the way it is. We came here so that we can transact business. We came here so that we can pass the budget. And today I'm so happy because I see 10 million meant for the presidential elections. We don't want to see our women undressing themselves in the streets of Kenya. We know it will bring curses to the people of Kenya. So today, I'm so happy, 10 million will be approved. Another issue, there is a lot of food insecurity. People are not doing business because the revenue of this nation has come low. So the member of Turkana should be a proud member because the people of Turkana will be gathered today. So there is 23 million men for free education. We know our women who are selling vegetables are suffering educating their children. So as a woman, as a mother, I know the mothers now will be resting because the government will take over the free secondary education. So I'm happy for this budget and I'm supporting it fully. We have quite a number of people who are old in our nation, and 6.1 million will be allocated to the old. It's my prayer that fairness will be the dictating factor in the distribution of the money to the old people. It should cover all the 47 counties. It should be distributed in a fair manner. There is 3 million men for maize subsidy. I know there are many people who are going without food in our country, and if this money is accepted, I know that Turkana people, amongst others, will have food on their tables. 470 million men for sanitary towels. We know when our children go to school without those items, they will not perform well. So we should be the first to pass this budget so that our children will have a conducive environment, the girls, when they are in school with the boys. So I support this budget, and I know on the 26th, President Uhuru will win the elections because Raila Odinga has run to US. Thank you.
The Honorable Rindikiri Muirwidhania Bori.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, let me congratulate you for joining the Speaker's panel. I want to take this opportunity to thank the committee led by Honorable Limo for the good work they have done. Madam Speaker, we all came to Parliament so that we can fast-track the business of the government. At this point in time, the country is at close load. We have to take measures, and what we are supposed to do as members of Parliament, we need to do it and do it fast. Madam Speaker, my attention has been drawn on the element of the allied and semi-allied programs that are contained in this supplementary budget. Madam Speaker, I come from a constituency which, even if it's Meru, can be defined as arid and semi-arid area because 3/4 of my constituency borders Isiolo and Laikipia. Madam Speaker, we need water. It's a major challenge. As I'm speaking to you this morning, there was a conflict. All the elephants and buffaloes have invaded the lower part of my constituency, looking for water and glass. Madam Speaker, this is a challenge. We need to contain the situation. Madam Speaker, our neighbors in Isiolo and Laikipia, because of lack of water, they are invading our areas in search of water and food for animals. So, Madam Speaker, it is very important that this budget is passed as a matter of urgency. Secondly, Madam Speaker, the security is becoming an issue. I was at the police headquarters in search of support because our neighbors are invading our place, and I was informed that there is no fund until we approve the budget. So, Madam Speaker, a lot of government institutions are not operating because of lack of funds. Madam Speaker, we have a lot of youth and youth programs we came to this house to try and push programs for the youth. And therefore, when I see a budget that is focusing on the training of youth, it forces me that I should support and urge the members to pass this supplementary budget. Not forgetting that the Minister of Education, we know next year, is going to pose a challenge. We need free secondary school education, meaning that more facilities will be required. And therefore, as members of this House,
Gilgil.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also take this chance to support this report. And from the onset, I want to thank the committee. They had to work under very strenuous circumstances. I know they worked long hours, even had the time to invite the public as is required by the Constitution in terms of submission of their views, boards in other hospitals. Madam Speaker, the issue of maize subsidy, I know the WHO released a very damning report of the kids who are thoroughly malnourished. And it's quite a worrying trend. If you look at the newspapers today, you'll see kids from Turkana who are desperate in terms they are underweight, they are really malnourished. And I hope that the interventions will be able to include and to complement what is already being done by other agencies like WHO, like Red Cross, to be able to save our children, to be able to ensure that they even reach 5 years in terms of their life. Madam Speaker, I beg to support this supplement and this report for the supplementary estimates for 2017-2018, and hope, Madam Speaker, that our colleagues can be honest enough and tell their constituents why they are elected to be in this House, because we are hoping that they will be able to take up their role of legislation, representation, and oversight seriously. Because this role, Madam Speaker, is not even the executive. That is why the committee had to invite the different departments of government and actually ask them to tell them why they should be allocated different resources. I beg to support. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Njoro, Chepkwony, Kadambi.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise to support the supplementary budget. I have gone through it and I've seen it is really a very important time for us to pass it. It is a priority right now in our country. I was going through it, and having come from Java constituency where majority of my people are farmers, I realized it has really taken it seriously for majority of people who do agriculture. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I appreciate the supplementary budget has taken seriously the matters of agriculture, the crop development and management, so that in future, this country, our farmers are going to be fully empowered so that we can encounter this country. Another thing I've noted and I appreciate so much, it is the budget set on the national security. Security is very important in our country, and therefore we appreciate that there is a good budget which is going to make sure that the entire team, it's going to, the entire national security arm is going to be equipped so that the security is fully enhanced and improved in our country. Another thing I've appreciated about this budget, Madam Speaker, it is the budget set for the special programs. I come from Joro constituency, which 2007-2008, majority of my people were affected, and we currently have IDPs whose matters have been not sorted out. Therefore, when I was going through this supplementary budget, I have really appreciated it. Another thing about this budget which is very crucial for us today, it is the issue of giving IEBC 10 million Kenya shillings. We really appreciate it. Therefore, it is the biggest responsibility for the IEBC to do their mandate, They already have enough resources, and it is their high time to know that it is an independent body which should not accept to be intimidated by anyone. Now they should be fully equipped themselves. I'm sure they have trained officers in every part of this country, because on 26th, this month, we are going to repeat the re-election of the presidential. And the IEBC, therefore, should be very happy. We have allocated and we are going to approve the supplementary budget. Having come from Mau region, where conservation is a very serious matter, this is the high time we restored our forests so that we make our country more better, we improve the agriculture sector, and we also encounter the insecurity of food in our country. Madam Speaker, I rise to stand and say I seriously support the supplementary budget, and this is the high time we did it very quickly. Thank you very much. As I wish to thank you, my Joro people, for having elected me as their first female MP. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Lentoimanga, member for Samburu North.
Finally. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Madam Speaker, for your information, I'm a member of the ad hoc supplementary committee, and I want to say that the members did a good work, very nicely. Together with the budget committee, they did a good work, and we need to support them. So I rise to support this budget, 2017-2018. Madam Speaker, this is a critical time for Kenya, and supplementary budgets are always provided for when there are unforeseen circumstances and unforeseen costs, issues that are of emergency, and this particular estimate addresses those emergencies that were not foreseen during the budget making process at the beginning of this year. Madam Speaker, of great importance is the free secondary education, the allocation of 23 billion shillings to free day secondary education. This is very important for us, especially for poor families. Many children are school-going children, especially secondary Form 1 up to Form 4, are mostly at home because of the economic problem that we are witnessing in this country now. The parents are unable to pay fees. So this money has come at the right time for these poor school-going children. And I think to me, this is very important because secondary education, although we used to say primary education is basic, in this country now, secondary education is a human right issue, and we need to support. That's why the supplementary budget allocated this money to this free secondary education. Furthermore, during the last parliament, most of us, including Samburu North, we constructed secondary schools. I constructed through CDF, we constructed 5-day secondary schools, and they needed a lot of support. For the poor, this is the most cheap education system in the parents can get, because at the end of the day, we see that free secondary school, or rather day secondary school, parents only pay about 10,000 per year. So those ones who cannot afford to take their children to boarding schools, this is the right time. So the government has done a nice thing together with the committee. This is a very wise policy, and we need to support it as members of parliament. Because at the moment, I'm sure now from January, many of them will go to school and they will not pay. For Jubilee policy, Jubilee manifesto, this is also the right direction. When we are campaigning in our respective areas, this is one of the manifestos that we had put in place, and we have told our people. And that's why one reason why they re-elected us back to this house. So we are actually fulfilling a pledge that we made during our campaign time. And I think we need to support this particular initiative so that it can go through. Second, Madam Speaker, the issue of the IBC allocation of 12 billion shillings. This was a request. A member had rose here earlier on to claim that we are giving IBC money when they don't need it. This request was made specifically by the IBC. And in either way, we have to do election in this country. We are a democratic country. The elections were done in 8th of August. The presidential elections were nullified, and we have to do this election again. We must put it behind our back so that we can move on. We came here so that we can work, so that we can deliver to our people, but because of the Court of Appeal, or rather the Supreme Court, we have been taken aback. So the election has to be done, and this money is specifically meant for a repeat election. So we need to give the IBC, that's the 12 billion, for them to prepare. And actually, they have already prepared. This is a budget that they have prepared themselves. They know what they are supposed to do, and the money will go along that particular budget. As for the Raila withdrawing, it doesn't matter. To me, it's like a young man going for initiation. And at the last minute, he fears for the knife. So he's a coward. He has run away. But this country must move on. We must move on because it's not a must that Raila should be in the ballot. It's a must that Raila should run so that this country can move and have election. We need to have election either way. Madam Speaker, the third issue is about enhancing safety transfer, the money that is meant for the elderly people. Old people, what you own at the age of 70 and above, what an old person needs is food and medication. He has no strength work. So this particular money, this enhancing 6.2 billion for the provision of safety net transfers for the elderly has come at the right time. And we need to support it. This house has to support it so that these old elderly persons, men and women, can actually extend their life here in this country. So this money is important, and I support it myself. I know it will help them so much so that they can live again an extra years with us. The fourth issue, Madam Speaker, that is very critical is the livestock offtake for those counties. 14 counties are facing severe drought. 14 counties in northern Kenya. I know this money is not enough, but all the same, it is going to add to the budget of the counties. Because in most cases, livestock portfolio department, livestock function is devolved to the county. So this one is just another budget for our counties to improve on the disbursement of livestock offtake. And Madam Speaker, I want to say that this particular sector has not been doing well, especially the livestock offtake. We did this even 2 months ago. And what we realized that is very wrong is not the people who are implementing the offtake do not normally target the most poor, the most affected. I want the Ministry of Livestock, this time round, with this 950 million, should be targeted to those who are very, very vulnerable. In every county, not all areas are affected by drought, only certain areas. And we have methods of doing assessment. We normally do, there are officers on the ground from National Drought Management Authority who do continuous assessment to identify the most vulnerable in areas that they work. So for example, in Samburu County, Samburu North and Samburu East are the most affected. So in that case, we need to focus this money, if it's allocated to the county or to the department, it must focus on Samburu North and Samburu East so that we can be able to make an impact on the problem that we have in those areas. Instead of giving out blanket allocation, We should focus on particular areas that are really having problem of livestock dying and people lacking food and people lacking